Let the pepper spray burn, you fucking creep.
Okay. We are talking about the found footage crime sort of horror movie called Witnesses. This one is written and directed by Christopher Bugart and is a low budget kind of, I guess, mostly found footage movie, and it focuses on 4 college students as they are making some type of kind of college project, basically a short horror film. And, you know, it's a very small cast. It's essentially like a stalker film. I think the actual film is called a Stalker. And it's about this guy who's like a masked killer chasing this girl. And, you know, they wanted to go and find the location. So they inadvertently stumble into this kind of warehouse. And they actually think this is somewhere else. They go to the wrong address. And they stumble into this warehouse. And it actually is a kind of the headquarters, so to speak, of like a drug cartel, like kind of Mexican drug cartel, and this is obviously on the American side of the border, but they are doing, you know, there's a drug factory essentially. They've got all sorts of stuff there. They are executing people. They do actually find someone who is kind of tied up to a chair, who is kind of relates to a kind of an ongoing case, for example. And they ultimately witness the kind of drug cartel members simply execute this guy after torturing him for a while, and of course then they get discovered, and can they escape with their lives? You know, you'll have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss first of all what works with Witnesses. This is a movie of 2 halves, and I've got to say the second half is quite the thrilling ride as we kind of get what it's more like, I guess, 2 fists, I suppose. We get our kind of our college protagonists chased around these kind of like this building. One of these kind of cartel members dons the kind of the mask of this kind of like that they were going to use for the film, so he's kind of like a masked killer, so to speak. So it kind of looks menacing, but he's not alone. There was actually another one there as well, who is kind of like the boss. And there is some tense kind of scenes of kind of torture. This movie doesn't kind of shy away from showing you some of the kind of the bloodiness that kind of goes on with the cartels. Although you don't necessarily see loads of people getting killed on screen, you certainly see lots of kind of dismembered bodies and things like this. So it doesn't kind of shy away from what is arguably a very kind of scary situation, because this stuff happens. So, you know, when you get your kind of like your supernatural kind of you know, movies, all that's kind of, it's fun, but this is scary because this actually happens, and these sort of things do actually happen by kind of cartel members and stuff. So it adds that kind of level of kind of scariness that I feel makes the threat seem a little bit more authentic and a little bit more kind of genuine. And I've got to say, the 2 guys who play the cartel members here really do seem kind of like menacing. At first they're kind of, you know, they just, before they discover they're being filmed, they're very kind of like, you know, suave, trying to kind of like get information from the guy they got turned up. Then it gets escalatingly violent and stuff like that. But then they kind of don't mess around either. They're kind of like, they pretty much want to kind of put bullets in people pretty quick. So I thought that was pretty good. But the actual effects of kind of dismembered heads and things like that, the way they've done it for a low budget film, I think is quite impressive. And even some of the kind of the subtle stuff that you'll kind of see in the background, you know, just the corpses kind of hanging up, which they kind of show you, but they don't spend too much time looking, look, we've made all these corpses hang. But it just looks good because the camera just kind of like, you know, you see it, but it doesn't make a whole point of having this like, look, we've made this corpse hanging upside down. So it just looks like, you know, scary because you kind of see it in the background, so to speak, which I thought was actually quite good here. The movie is quite thrilling as well in that kind of last extended act, so to speak. It's the kind of like the cat and mouse game of, you know, who's going to win, who's going to kind of like end up getting captured and killed, and are these kind of students be able to kind of fight back in any type of way. And then we see the kind of the escalating scale of the what these drug cartel are up to. The acting, I think, is, for the majority of the cast, pretty good. Like I said, I've mentioned a couple of the cartel members, and a couple of the kind of the students as well. I think do pretty good, especially the female lead. I think that's probably the best job here out of the kind of the students. I think she's pretty convincing as kind of a multiple of emotions as the kind of the movie kind of goes through. The main issue I have with this film is the first half goes on. It's a little bit too boring, quite frankly. It's over half the movie until we get our kind of threat, and I understand obviously you need to build up the characters and stuff, but it was just like college kids pratfalls for half the movie, and I'm not interested in college kids pratfalls for half the film. I get you have to establish that they're kind of young, college campers and they're going to take things seriously. I get it. 20 minutes, I get that, but nearly half of, over half the film, in fact, before we really get that, to me it was just a little bit too long. There are a few plot elements as well that just seemed a little bit kind of silly. There's an instance where we have some protagonists, I won't say who, get into a car, but instead of just flooring it and getting away, they stand there and having a chat, and it's just like, it's just like silly movie decisions, if that makes sense. And I say this, like, I swear I say this every review. I want to see a film where people act like they do in real life and not like these kind of like movie decisions, like I call it, because it just frustrates me. And I just think it just has this kind of like, because we wanted to have another scene, and it just irritates me that we kind of get this like movie decisions, basically. The film does have the trope as well where it shows you a scene near the end at the beginning of the movie, and that's a trope I absolutely hate, because it's like, okay, I mean, it does go a little bit beyond that, but I just don't understand why that trope exists, to be honest, because you could have known, okay, I kind of know who's going to live to a certain point, who's not, and it just frustrating me. It frustrates me when when films do that, because it's so overdone. And it kind of takes the tension out, because you're just waiting for that moment to happen, so that you're waiting for the rest of the movie to catch up. Outside of that, there's a couple of instances of a little bit of CGI blood, and some of the acting I felt from although not necessarily bad, from some of our college kids, just a little bit too, and also the way they were written, especially one guy who is the kind of the guy who plays like the stalker. He just seems a little bit too cartoonish to be a real person, if that makes sense. I get he's kind of the dumbass of the group, but he just seems a little bit too unrealistically stupid, if that makes sense. But I've got to say that the latter half of this movie was absolutely thrilling, and I was actually glued to it. It's just a shame that the quality isn't there for the whole film, but if you can get through the first half, then this is definitely actually worth a watch, I would say. And although it's, strictly speaking, I guess you would call it a kind of a slasher stalker film, because that is, we are getting these guys running around being chased by a masked killer, but I guess it falls more into the kind of the crime thriller genre to a certain degree, but it's worth a watch, I would say, if you're a found footage fan. Although there just seems to be a couple of instances where there seems to be footage coming from somewhere, I'm not quite sure when, and these guys have these big camera rigs on, and you just think, are these guys going to, they're running away from cartel members. Are they really going to be hanging onto the cameras? Are they really going to be having these rigs kind of slowing them down, or would you just dump them? Anyway, again, movie decisions. So 6 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.